Alright everybody, welcome back once again to Redzone Ramblin. I'm Kyle also.
Just Kendrick today.
It's just Kendrick today, and we're here to talk about some of the new head coaching changes around the league. First and foremost, we wanted to make a video on the Arizona coaching change and just the Arizona Cardinals team in general, what's going on with them recently and within the organization. And more specifically, Steve Wilks and how he became the new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. So this is tough for me to follow Arians anytime because he's so loved by the people. But I really think he's going to do a good job there. Just because they have enough talent. For me, on the defensive side of the ball, it doesn't seem like they're lacking anywhere. They have Chandler Jones, who led the league in sacks. They have Patrick Peterson, who's a veteran leader. They have Tyrann Mathieu, who's a young talent, and they just have Budda Baker, who they got, this was his first season playing for them. So they're stacked with talent. He's known to have success on the defensive side of the ball. He's been a D coordinator at Chicago when Chicago went to the Super Bowl. He was a D coordinator for the Chargers, and he turned them around pretty quickly. I think they were first in the league one year. His second year they were there, or 2010. I think he was 9 to 11 maybe, and he totally turned them around. It's also important to note that Ron Rivera was D coordinator at both those places when he was doing that. How much of his success is attributed to Ron Rivera, do you think? Because he's been tied to him his whole entire...
I don't think Ron Rivera's that good of a head coach anyway. He's a better coordinator than the head coach, so I don't
yeah,
think that matters.
But I'm saying on the defense, I'm giving him credit because he was a D-backs coach. I'm sorry if I said he was a D coordinator, but he was a D-backs coach for both the Bears and the Chargers, and that's when they kind of made that turnaround. But Ron Rivera was the D coordinator.
I mean, it was the defensive backs that led the Bears defense anyway. Like they had the most takeaways in the league that year, 44, and like over 35 of them was secondary. So I think it was more him than Ron Rivera, because it wasn't the whole defense that was great. It was really the secondary.
Right.
And they had one great linebacker.
So do you think that's gonna translate to the Cardinals?
No. I mean, I think it's a good hire. Obviously, he's a good coach, but I think there's way too many holes. I mean, like the system he plays is he plays a really versatile system in linebackers. And they have one good linebacker there in Hassan Reddick. And Carlos Stanley's probably going to leave. And Hassan Reddick was a rookie this year. He did well. But I mean, he's known as the DB guy, and they're going to have Patrick Peterson, Budda Baker. That's fine. Tyrann Mathieu will fit his system as a nickel corner, and he gets paid way too much just to be a nickel corner. So I think Tyrann Mathieu leaves. And the linebacker talent they have there is nowhere near as he's come from the Panthers, so it's nowhere near as good as Thomas Davis or Luke Kuechly. So I mean, that system is going to have some holes in it. First of all, they're going to have to figure out. He's not going to be able to have that same aggressive scheme like they do, because he runs a really aggressive zone, and you can't do that with those linebackers. Yeah,
I was reading earlier about his zone coverage that he runs, and normally there's a sit. I think it's called the sit zone, where you kind of it's a typical zone that's kind of outdated at this point.
Yeah, they don't run that anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's pretty much easy for quarterbacks to pick holes, receivers to pick holes, because there's so many options within the routes nowadays.
Yeah.
They can sit in the zones and tear you apart. Well, this one's more of I think they call it a shadow zone.
Matching.
What is it?
Pattern matching.
Pattern matching zone.
Yeah, I mean, and they could do that because they had great linebackers there. They had Shaq Lawson and Kuechly and Davis, and like I said, the linebackers there just aren't up to snuff there. And I think Tyrann Mathieu leaves. But the big thing there is, I mean, they still don't have a quarterback. I mean, and we saw last year what the Broncos did. They decided to get a defensive coach, right, and then rely on the offensive coordinator to develop the quarterbacks. And it's the same guy, the leading guy for, it actually is, they hired Mike McCoy, who's the offensive coordinator for the Broncos last year. He got fired after week 11 after they lost 6 straight, and the offense only scored 14 points a game and led the league with 17 turnovers at week 11. He got fired because those 6 games they lost in a row, remember how bad the Broncos were?
Yeah.
It was terrible, and he couldn't do anything with his 2 quarterbacks. So the Broncos did the same thing. They hired a defensive coach who had never been a defensive coordinator, who had never been a head coach before, and relied on the OC to try to develop quarterbacks. And that's what we're going to try to do this year with the same guy, Mike McCoy, whose system did not work. So I think that the offensive side could be a disaster.
I think this year was a little bit of a drop off just because they didn't have David Johnson. Carson Palmer went down. I mean, that's a huge
I'm talking
deal.
about they're doing the same outline that the Broncos did. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
And they still don't have a quarterback. So the Broncos had 3 different quarterbacks. You know, the Cardinals have 0 quarterbacks. You know what I mean? So I mean, they have the 15th pick, which I don't think they're going to get a quarterback with 15th. They could. I think it would be a waste. So
they might.
I think
it's not
either get Foles or Alex Smith, which I don't know how great that Mike McCoy's offense just looked terrible.
I think
and Steve Wilks is not going to give you anything offensive wise, so it's going to be on Mike McCoy.
I think it's going to depend on who they get in the offseason as far as quarterback goes, and I think that's really it. I think
it's Foles, Bradford, or Smith.
I think otherwise, I think any of those guys would lead this team to 10 wins. To be honest, with all of the talent they have on that team, I mean, you got to think they have one top 5 DB in Patrick Peterson, and Tyrann Mathieu is probably a top 10 DB in my opinion too.
Be there.
You don't think Tyrann Mathieu is going to be there?
No, because in the Steve Wilks system, he played nickel, and then he gets paid way too much to just be a nickel corner. You know what I mean?
He won't be a nickel.
That's where he fits the system, because Steve Wilks plays like Sean Norman, like big, strong dudes, like who in like Tyrann Mathieu doesn't fit that. Like they float him around now, like cornerback and safety.
Right.
He doesn't have a real position, so I just think they're going to pay him way too much for him to just play nickel. So I think that's what Steve Wilks would want him to play.
I don't know. I think
he doesn't fit like the Josh Norman mold.
I think Tyrann Mathieu's good enough
like
to where
Charles
they find.
Tim, like all the guys said.
I think Tyrann Mathieu is versatile enough and a good enough player for them to fit him in that system.
That's what we've been saying, but he's been bounced around his whole career in the NFL. You know what I mean? He hasn't really found his spot. And at this point, you know, like I said, I think they're paying too much. I think they're gonna have to bring in some linebackers there. So I think they're gonna have to get rid of some of that money.
Also, as I was reading about this zone coverage that Steve Wilks kind of runs, I was reading that the reason, because I was like wondering, well, okay, well, this is such like a good, you know, zone, and they have good, all they need is good players. Shouldn't Carolina be good? They slacked off a little bit defensively. So they said that you don't need just good athletes. You need people who are smart, who know how to run that. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if I know that the talent's there, but even more so, these linebackers might thrive. You don't know; they could thrive in it.
Yeah, he's bringing the linebackers coach over to be the DC. So I mean, that's going to help Hassan Reddick a lot. I think he's going to be the best player on that defense for years to come. So I mean, it really depends on like his development and who they pick up, because there's a lot of good linebackers on free agency. So I think those are the two more things. They had to get a quarterback and they had to get some linebacker help.
Right, and this is a good system to run if you have people who aren't necessarily the best athletes but know how to play football. Yeah. And that is something I could see being very enticing to a linebacker core that's a little bit subpar right now.
Yeah, I could see like a Pusilesny going in there because he's a free agent.
Right.
That would fit nicely.
Right. I think he might be a little too slow, but I'm with you. I'm with that train of thought for sure.
Like Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly are not fast. They're not fast. So,
right.
Like it just takes a smart player.
It does. But then again, they stopped. You know what I'm saying? They stopped kind of turning it on this year as far as coverage goes.
Those two guys are amazing though. But with the Cardinals, like the whole thing, like this year is kind of hard to tell anything because, you know, like Carson Palmer went down, David Johnson was down. I mean, but like the supporting cast really was not deep. There was no depth on that team at all. So they have a lot of depth on the offensive side to build up. Like Nelson, like John Brown and J.D. Nelson, whatever, they're not paying out a wide receiver. You have like one wide receiver who maybe play next year.
Very
so
old.
They're gonna have to fix wide receiver, quarterback. He's
got
a lot of work to do.
And that was a big reason why I really felt Larry Fitzgerald was going to stay this year, is because he is a veteran presence on that offense, and I think he cares enough about the organization and sees these young guys coming in enough to mentor them maybe for another season.
That's why I think Steve Wilks is a great coach. I just don't think it was good for the Cardinals maybe because they need to do a ton of work on offense, and if Mike McCoy is the guy handling it, I don't think that fares well. I think you're right about Mike McCoy. I don't think because that was awful.
Yeah, I don't think he's the greatest by any means, but I do think this defense is going to be insanely good. The offense with David Johnson back is going to put on enough or have enough production to get them 10 wins. I think this is going to garner a 10-win season from the Arizona Cardinals just by this coaching change.
Yeah, I think that would have to be the standard right there.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. So, you have anything else?
No.
Yep. Well, that's all we have, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, all the above. Take it easy.